Every year since 1989, the Library of Congress has selected 25 films to add to the National Film Registry. The criteria? The films must be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
Each week on You're Missing Out, we take a look at one of these films to try and get to the heart of why they were selected and why they still matter.
This week, Maureen Gosling joins us to discuss her work on the landmark Les Blanc documentary Chulas Fronteras. Our guest today has been a filmmaker since 1972, starting out as a sound recordist, moving on to editing, directing, producing, even distribution. Currently, they work with Jed Reif on Protesta Productions, which has a new film coming out, and they are here today to talk about Chulas Fronteras. Maureen Gosling joins us on the show to talk about Chulas Fronteras. Thank you so much for joining us. This is very cool.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
Well, welcome to the Madhouse. We're very happy to have you. Excuse me if I'm a little not great today. It decided to go from 60 degrees 2 days ago to snowing today. So got quite the quick old cold going on here. So
New York's doing great.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Doing great.
Keep melting the ice caps. Who cares?
We are so excited to have you here. I will fully concede when Kyle let me know that he had been able to get in touch with you and you were interested in coming on the program, I initially just didn't believe him. I was truly had a moment where I was like, I'm glad you found someone with the same name to email, but this can't be.
Kyle's a catfish. This is interesting.
Yeah.
Great.
That's and then he had the last laugh because he actually got in touch with the real you. Which is a nice thing.
Yeah.
We are so thrilled to have you here, even if it does kind of, I'll be honest, throw off a lot of my usual routine, because as I was telling you before we started recording, no point in me asking you your familiarity with the material. I'm not even going to be able to really cite the audio commentary because you'll just go, I know. I was there. Yeah, I know. But I would love if we could kind of start with just, we're going to focus on Chulas, but I'd love to just kind of give the folks a general overview of how you got started in this field and just talk a bit about your experience in the kind of, you've been doing this since 1972, what got you into it and kind of what drew you to this medium?
Well, I was at University of Michigan, and I didn't really know what I was going to be focusing on. I ended up choosing social anthropology and got my degree in that. And it really got me interested in people and culture, and I just fell in love with it. And I had also concurrently had a passion for especially foreign films, because it was the kind of the new wave of, Fellini and Antonioni and Godard and all those films. And I just loved going to these films. And I heard about this ethnographic film festival, and I had never thought about film as a career at all. But I thought, wow, ethnographic films. So I went to this ethnographic film conference and found that in 3 days of watching films about people and culture, I learned more than I did in reading books the last 2 or 3 years. And Les Blanc's films were showing there. And his were really unusual. They were very poetic and very different from all these, very anthropological films about people from New Guinea and Africa and so forth. He made films about the United States, and they were cul-de-sacs. They were parts of the U.S. that I wasn't familiar with. Lightning Hopkins in Texas and Cajun folks in Louisiana, and the story, of course, is longer than I will go into now, but I ended up being an assistant to Les about 9 months after this conference. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. I had no idea that the first thing I would be doing would be lugging a 25-pound Nagra tape recorder around and in the boonies of Black French Louisiana. And it was amazing. And I mean, I was terrified because I didn't know how to. I barely even knew how to use a cassette recorder, let alone this, the Rolls Royce of, of tape recorders. And so the first day we shot was in Louisiana, and it was in the countryside during their Mardi Gras. And one of my vivid images is chasing after Les when he was running after chickens, and I was trying to keep up with them with my, like, bouncing around with my microphone and headphones and tape recorder, and not wanting to trip on the cord between us. But it was this incredible experience being there, and that film ended up being Dry Wood and Hot Pepper, about Clifton Chenier and the Creole culture and music of Southwest Louisiana. That was my baptism by fire, but I ended up working with Les for 20 years after that, and we made an incredible number of wonderful films, and each one was like an adventure, and I sort of couldn't quit. I just we did everything from films about rock star Leon Russell to which is A Poem is a Naked Person, to Always for Pleasure, about Carnival in New Orleans and the Black Mardi Gras Indians, to Polish American polka dancers in the East and Midwest, and Serbians in Chicago, and a bunch of films in Louisiana about Cajun music and Zydeco. And so it was a very, I mean, Les was not the easiest person to work with and be with, but he was definitely a very dear friend. And I sort of, learned how to deal with him over the years. But he was constantly full of surprises. And so just when I was thinking, oh, I need to move on, I'm not really getting anywhere with Les, he would come up with some other idea that was like, oh my God, gap-toothed women. How can I not work on that one? And so anyway, I could certainly, there's plenty to talk about there. And of course, in the middle of it was getting to know Chris Strachwitz, who had the building where we had our editing space. The building was Down Home Music, and it also had our Hooley Records, which was Chris Strackwitz's American Roots music record label. And he was a character, and he was, it was just really great to be in the building with him, because downstairs was this incredible record store. And, if I needed any music for any of the films we were working on, I could just go in the record store and ask the guys, hey, you got something that could go with this or that? And we got to know Chris very well through working on Chulas Fronteras, which I was an assistant on, actually. And then I ended up doing Del Mero Corazon, and I can tell you more details about how that happened. But the other film that we did with Strachwitz was J'étais au bal, I Went to the Dance, about the history of Cajun and Zydeco music in Louisiana. And the years went by, and I became more and more of a friend to Chris, especially in his later years. And after Chris Simon and I did the film about him, This Ain't No Mouse Music, the story of Chris Strachwitz and our Hooley Records. And he was just a very, very special, dear friend to me until he passed away 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. That This Ain't No Mouse Music is so that was a funny thing, as well as, I always prep for these seasons well ahead of time. And so I watched This Ain't No Mouse Music, ahead of this season, and was like, oh my God, this is just such a wealth of information on this person. This is so, and getting ready to come on to whatever episode we eventually do on Chulas, go, telling everybody, including our, whoever we have on, like, oh, you've got to check this out. And again, you are the one person, Maureen, who I don't have, who you're like, I've seen it plenty of times. You do not, there's no information from that documentary you can tell me that I'm not going to know. So I can't impress you with any of the facts I gleaned from that. But if folks should absolutely, if they enjoyed this episode, I believe it's on Canopy for those who have a library card, and just such a fascinating subject. This man was a German immigrant who came with and discovered this. It's something it's actually, not to take us off of Chulas here, but it's something we talk about so much on this show with so many different people. We were just talking about it with about Michael Romer, who was a German immigrant as well. We've talked about Frank Capra. This amazing thing of people who immigrate to this country and have this artistic drive and are able to see the beauty in this country and in parts of this country that others, maybe whether they take it for granted or they just don't see it at all, and are able to expose us this. And when you watch that film you made and you look at just what just our Hooli Records alone was doing to kind of, you almost felt this energy of like, while the rest of the country was kind of going, yeah, man, we're kind of digging on folk music a bit. It was like there was one guy off the side going, "Oh, you haven't heard nothing yet. Just you wait. Look at the other stuff I found. It's awesome." It's
And he was like a kid in a candy store, always excited. Till the day he died, he got excited about stuff. I mean, that was one thing that was very clear with him, and fun. It was really fun to go places with him and hang out with him, and he would always have some new thing that he was excited about, and it was like the only thing that was important.
It's
yeah. So just a quick addition to my career. I did stop working with Les at one point, and I made a film of my own with this woman named Ellen Osborne called Blossoms of Fire that was shot in Mexico. And it was about this community in southern Oaxaca that has a reputation of being a matriarchy. So that film was really important in my life as well. And I'm hoping that it will get back in distribution. It's been out of distribution for a while, and I'm getting it, digitally restored, which is really great. And then since the early 2000s, I've been working with this guy named Jed Reif, and his films have been more social justice oriented. So I edited a film about medical marijuana for him, and one about California Indians, the history of California Indians, that was part of a 4-part series that went on PBS. And the recent film that we did together with me as director and he as producer is called The 9 Lives of Barbara Dane, about another American that has been sort of overlooked. She was a jazz blues folk singer, social justice activist, Barbara Dane, who passed away about a year ago at the age of 97. And she was actually a very good friend of Strachwitz's and knew him before he even started our Hooli Records. And her life was just incredible, touching on all these cultural luminaries, especially of the 20th century, like Pete Seeger mentored her, Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan peddled songs to her because she was a little older than him and had carved her way in the Greenwich Village, singing as a folk singer. She worked with Jane Fonda in the anti-war GI coffee house movement, and really helped Jane Fonda get her political foundation, interestingly. And Barbara almost went on the road with Louis Armstrong because he thought she was really cool. And she sang songs of the Black blues women of the 20s and sort of revived them. And she was a white woman singing the blues. Sometimes people didn't realize she was white. So anyway, that would be a whole other show, but just a little bit of an update. That film sort of combines my love of music and as well as political more of a political orientation, but also about a strong woman, which, yeah.
So it's interesting. You said you and Jed focus more on social activist topics. Is it hard nowadays to find social justice topics? Because we've cleaned up a lot of issues,
Running smooth.
especially since January of this year. Everything has just gotten
Running
so much
smooth.
easier. And it's making work for documentarians like you. It must be hard. You really have to like go back into the past to find subjects now.
Well, we started the film about Barbara Dane in 2016, so it was literally the year that some of the debacle started. But the first thing that we did was film her doing an album at the age of 89, and then going on the road, and including Havana, Cuba, and we went with her, and she performed also at Joe's Pub in New York, and Royce Hall in LA, and SF Jazz in San Francisco, and Yoshi's Jazz Club in Oakland. But her whole life, I mean, she started out as an 18-year-old, protesting and singing songs at anti-fascist marches and civil rights stuff in Detroit, way before the civil rights movement. Yeah.
Genuinely remarkable. That one of the things that I think comes across in what you're describing, and also comes across in Chulas Fronteras as well, is the way that you were saying, it gets to cover music, it gets to cover social justice, but I think that one of the things that some people may not appreciate is just how often those worlds can intersect, right? And just how often even songs that might seem on the surface innocuous, right? Music that you could listen to, and I'll be honest, as I have certainly done over the years with this film, is sometimes, because one of the things that I do enjoy about this film and a number of these films, particularly the music films, is yes, sometimes you are sitting down and you are watching them, studiously and really locked in, especially if you get to see a screening of them. But one of the advantages, I guess, of home video is sometimes you really can just like have them on and just sort of vibe. You know what I mean? And you can sort of just let it wash over you. But, particularly when you're dealing with something in the Spanish language, I don't speak Spanish, and you can listen to these songs and kind of just be lost in the melody, right?
Right.
But then when you sit and as the film captures and you look at the lyrics and you watch them play out in front of you, it's like a whole nother dimension is unlocked. And,
yes.
I just love the way these worlds can intersect.
Well, it's the old axiom of all art's political, even like you said, even if you are a native Spanish speaker, you could just listen to it and just enjoy it. Like, oh, this is a good song and it's blah, blah, blah. But, if you really dig into it, that's why, like, a lot of the great movies, Chulas being one of them, where you could just sort of enjoy it for what it is, deep dive look into this specific family, the specific musical movement, all of that, and just enjoy it. But, the best movies are the ones where you can enjoy it on the surface, but then really dig deep into it. I always say the best balance is it's the text and the subtext working at an even level. If you tip too far one way in either direction, you kind of get in a movie can be like, okay, this is good, but I don't feel like I got a complete meal here. I think with a movie like Chulas, even though it's only like 57, 58 minutes, you get a complete 5-course meal here, because it's what I think every movie should aspire to be. It's entertainment and it's informative, enriching, and all of that.
One thing that is interesting, like with working with Jed, the films are sort of more obviously social justice topics, and some controversial stuff like Indian gaming. It was a really important part of the the film on California Indians. But Les's films, he wasn't interested in. He was more interested in the feeling connection with people, in his viewers, to especially through the music. And he, like, if the Lightning Hopkins film, The Blues According to Lightning Hopkins, was made during the Civil Rights era, but there's no reference in time to what was going on with the Civil Rights era. But you really feel Black people in South Texas, and you get to understand them through their lyrics and stories and music. And the film really holds up. Some of these films really hold up over time because they aren't attached to a time. And one of the problems, I have a lot of friends who are making social justice films, and sometimes you can't end your film because something else happens, and you have to put another coda on it, another addendum. Oh, and this is what happened next, and or something totally different happens that you weren't expecting. That totally changes the trajectory of your film. So that's one interesting, contrast with these two wonderful men that I've worked with. But with Chulas Fronteras, the contents of the songs are already, a lot of them, not all of them, it's just a certain percentage in the film of especially relating to farm workers, and like the Soy Mexico Americano, I'm Mexican American. It's a very proud song, and it's a very Chicano song. But the content of the corridos and the corrido de Cesar Chavez and so forth really relate to very important and serious political issues of injustices and, treating workers right, and immigration and so forth. So it was a little different for Les to do a film like that. But, he certainly was, excuse me, he cared, and he was empathetic, and he was totally for all of these, issues of, improving people's lives, and especially when you get to know the people, you fall in love with them, and so you don't want to see them harmed. And anyway, so that's a little bit about the way these films are different.
I'd love to talk specifically about some of the elements of Chulas, but before we get into that, I have one specific question. However, prefacing it all, before we talk any more about this, let's hear what the Library of Congress had to say. So here's what the National Film Registry had to say about Chulas Fronteras.
Chulas Fronteras. Accomplished documentarian Les Blank directed this complex, insightful look at the Chicano experience as mirrored in the lives and music of the most acclaimed norteño musicians of the Texas-Mexican border, including Flaco Jiménez and Lydia Mendoza. Much of Chulas Fronteras features no dialogue, and this lack of narration allows for more focus on the sights and sounds of the local music and culture.
So the reason I wanted to play that clip, and the one question I wanted to ask, because in 5 years and over 100 episodes of doing this show, I've never gotten to ask this of anybody. We've never been in this situation. So the film you've worked on, the film we're talking about today, the film is in the National Film Registry. Your work is preserved by the Library of Congress. Do you remember hearing about this when it got inducted? What was your feeling about it? What is your feeling on it? Like, what does that feel like to know that this is preserved in this fashion?
Well, I do remember, and I just was very thrilled and very honored, and I appreciated so much that there was attention paid to this community, which hasn't had that kind of acknowledgement enough. And certainly in our national sort of overview culture, I just was thrilled. I thought it was an incredible honor, and was just appreciated that it was, yeah, being recognized as part of our own heritage. It's not just these foreigners coming in; it's people that live here, that people that have have grown up here, that care, that uh, call this country their home, and they have this incredible culture, and they have contributed to our culture. I mean, there's so much that we have received and in benefits from the Mexican American community. And yeah, I was very proud. I thought it was very exciting. And I know both Strachwitz and Les were very pleased.
It's so, earlier this season, we actually got to speak to the congressman who wrote the legislation for the registry. And for anybody just tuning into this episode, I recommend you go back to that at some point, because to hear him discuss like why this was so important, and to relay these anecdotes about, at his home, Jimmy Stewart and Burt Lancaster and all of these luminaries arguing for the importance of this, right? And to know that within the first, 5 years of this registry, that it not only expanded to include so many different types of films and to cover that, but that there really was, within the lifetimes of these people, to see it really take on this role of not just, well, let's stop Ted Turner from colorizing It's a Wonderful Life, but move into this place of like, well, how do we make sure that we bring attention to and essentially like canonize these aspects of American culture that would not necessarily be recognized in that same fashion otherwise, whether it be on, an Academy Award level or on a, an AFI level or something like that. So getting to be part of that continuum, and also, I mean, getting to be part of that so early in the existence of the registry, now it's what, the 38th, 39th year, but there was only, I think, the number of documentaries that get into the National Film Registry before Chulas Fronteras, I could probably count on two hands.
Wow.
It's a very limited category. I think the first year it was only one. It was Nanook of the North. There's, again, maybe been a handful. They only, in these early years, they only did maybe one or two. I think the year that Chulas gets in, I think they also induct Point of Order, and I think that's the only other documentary. So that it's getting that recognition that early too, I think really speaks to the power that this film has and what it captures.
Yeah, the film was very, very meaningful to the Latino community because no one had ever done anything like it before. And it was a recognition and an acknowledgement of like you said, the luminaries of their culture. I mean, Flaco Jiménez was known in the community. Narciso Martinez was revered in the community, as was Santiago Sr. And then the younger generation, like Santiago Jr. and, well, Flaco was in that case younger, but Lydia Mendoza, groundbreaking singer. And we the film was made at a time when these people were still alive, and so it was actually an incredible fortune for Chris, because he just thought that it was, like he hit the bullseye, because he was able to film so many of these people when they were still alive. And yeah, so I didn't actually go on the shoot on this film. I was an assistant. It was when I had just sort of started to work with Les. And but during the editing, we had just made Dry Wood and Hot Pepper in Black French, Louisiana. And it was such a contrast to go to this film. One example is that when Les and Chris got back from shooting, they started looking at the dailies. And I don't know if people realize this, but 16 millimeter film, you had to have the sound recorded separately on 1/4-inch tape and then transferred to 16 millimeter magnetic tape so that the two could be together in the editing, the sound and picture could match. So, but when you first look at your dailies, there's no sound on them. And so Les would always talk about how when Chris first saw the dailies, he got depressed because he didn't think they had anything. There would be this whole concert of Los Alegres de Tehran playing, and they're just up there playing their accordion and standing there. And Chris said, Les, we have to go back to to Texas. We didn't get anything. But when the sound got put to it, it was like, oh my God, okay, we're okay, we're okay. And so Chris was so impressed with what Les had done with filming black blues singers and Cajun musicians that he wanted Les to do something on the Mexican American traditions. So he just knew that he was the guy. I mean, they were already friends. We were already working in his building, or we were just starting to work in his building on editing this film. And so for me, after having been in Texas, in Louisiana with Clifton Chenier, who was, just this really expressive guy and with his accordion and really belting it out. And then hearing this Mexican music that was very, more staid and sort of low key. Some of the songs were more animated, but what really hit me was the passion was in the lyrics of the songs. And the lyrics of the songs were like, oh, wow, now that I know what they're singing about, this is really where it's at. And then I just fell in love with the music myself because I lived in sort of the East and Midwest and a little bit in the South in Kentucky when I was growing up, and was not exposed to Mexican culture at all. And so I always sort of had this bias about it, and I thought I couldn't relate to it. So by working on, even as an assistant on Chulas Fronteras, I got soaked in it and I got really into the songs, and I just thought it was great. And it really was an eye-opener for me in my life. And it sort of has really become a part of my identity to be connected with it. I learned Spanish much better. I started out with studying French in school, but working on translating Chulas Fronteras and especially Del Mero Corazon, I started learning all these new vocabulary words and trying to get the translations. We were working with this guy Guillermo Hernandez, who was incredibly instrumental in this film, and he and I worked on the translations, and so that really was provided a foundation for me to keep up my interest in Mexican American culture. And Guillermo, I can speak about him. When Chris and Les were editing the film, or they just got back from Texas, they said, we really need it to have a Mexican guy or a Mexican person or a Chicano to help us with this, because here we are, these two white guys, we want to make sure we get it right. So they did some searching around and found this guy named Guillermo Hernandez, who was an instructor I think he was at UC Berkeley, and he was this wonderful guy, just really sweet and very smart. And he got involved and was a great advisor on the film, and as I said, worked on translations and was given a credit in Del Mero Corazon as a co-filmmaker. Anyway, he sadly passed away at much, much too young of an age. And he was a very good friend of Chris's. And Chris was really broken when Guillermo passed away. But without Guillermo, neither of those two films would be what they are. And I definitely would like to give him credit.
Well, I think one thing you said that so intrigues me too, from my vantage point, is you're talking about not being familiar with this Mexican culture and this Mexican music, and I think that's something that is going to be hard, I think, for our younger listeners to grasp in a way. And I was even saying to Tom and Kyle, weeks ago, that obviously Flaco Jiménez is featured in this film. I remember in my childhood that album Flaco put out, Partners. That one that's him with Linda Ronstadt and duetting with all these other artists was ubiquitous. Like my dad had the cassette. I remembered hearing it all the time. Like I was telling them it was I put it on the other day and it was like slipping into an old favorite jacket. I was so exposed to it. And I think now, obviously, so much Spanish language music and so much Mexican music and all that is so ubiquitous. I mean, Bad Bunny is playing the Super Bowl, and this is not, it's a little, I think, strange for younger listeners of ours. I could say, to maybe understand that there was a time when so much of this music was confined to a certain region or confined to a certain community and segmented. We all kind of grew up in that post, I guess what they called it in the 90s, like world music boom. Like, I don't know, Paul Simon released Graceland and suddenly everybody's parents were like, I guess we can listen to music from other countries. For people of my generation, like that was very, Billy Joel does River of Dreams and they're just like, well, all right, I suppose we'll step outside our...
Also pre-internet, you deal with any young person today. They genuinely can't comprehend the fact that every single thing was available at your fingertips at any time. They don't know what like a landline telephone was. They don't know what broadband internet was or dial-up internet. So the fact that they couldn't just go on like TikTok and type in Chicano music or whatever and just like spend 3 hours just scrolling through Chicano music on their phones in their beds. They're just like, well, they go, well, how did you listen to where'd you get your music from? And you go, well, it's just the people you knew around you. And back then things were a lot more segregated either by law or just by people tended to be stick to their neighborhoods and their friends and families and all that. So there wasn't, for multiple reasons, there was not much multiculturalism going on unless you actively like sought it out. And things like Chulas definitely would help in that regards because even now, like I've been to Texas a lot, and I hear this kind of music a good deal, but I wouldn't say I'm no expert or anything. But being able to watch a movie like this a few times in prep for the show. It definitely helps give you a better appreciation for it, makes you want to search it out more. The context for all of it just helps just enrich all of it. And, if I was, I'm sure I would have been the same cinephile freak I was, I am now that I would have been in 1970s, just going to 42nd Street all the time and dodging the muggers just to see whatever movie was playing. Like I'm sure I would have found my way to this at some point. I would have been like the Joe Dantes of that era of just seeing everything. And I think seeing this would have, because seeing this now was like great for me because I talk about it on the show all the time. There's always handful of movies every year that we do where I have no context for the movie. I never heard of it. Don't know what the movie's about. And I go, okay, well, it's on the list. I got to watch it. I can just go in totally blind. And just going into this movie totally blind and just letting it happen to you. I felt like, okay, well, yeah, this is the kind of movie that I want. Well, I like everything, but this is one of the kinds of movies I like. This is the kind of documentary that I really vibe with. Just this very experiential, just in the moment, just like this is what life is. Just like just kind of here it is, for a group that I can't speak to. If it's not Italians from Brooklyn, I'm not an expert on it. So, yeah, this is the kind of anthropological, sociological, lived-in kind of storytelling that I think anybody could watch. I think you could show it to somebody today, and even people that like, oh, I don't watch anything before 2010, and you just want to like, smack them in the head and just be like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I think you could show it to those kinds of people and they would be like, oh, this is good. Yeah, this is just like, okay. There's almost like a home video quality to it. And yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. I'm sick, so excuse me and my fried brain.
Well, the one thing that is true about it is some of the issues are still the same. Yeah. I mean, the farm worker issues are still the same. That's probably the part of the film that has the most connection with today. I mean, it's more like maybe the style of clothes date the film, but the issues and the content doesn't, because the same kinds of birthday parties for kids with the piñata, people still do that, in Mexican families, Mexican American families. And there are even, non-Mexicans now that like to do piñatas because it's cool. Yeah. And it's like we have Dia de los Muertos because it's cool. It's part of our culture. It's started seeping into the general American culture because it's a wonderful tradition and from Mexico. And so there's definitely resonance for today. And I was just going to put a plug in for the Frontera collection about Chris Strachwitz. Was an absolute obsessed with 78 RPM records, which were the original old-fashioned, recording device that was people listened to until, like, I don't know what year would you say, the 40s or something, maybe the 50s. And Chris was constantly tracking down Mexican records, and we have scenes of it in This Ain't No Mouse music. But the reason I bring it up is because after he passed, or at a certain point, he realized that he needed to have this music digitized so that people could listen to it now in a digital format. And the big Mexican group, Los Tigres del Norte, actually gave him some money to have his collection digitized. So he had this young man named Juan Antonio Cuellar. He hired him, and like, I don't know if it's been 10 years ago. No, it's maybe more than 10 years ago. He hired this guy. And Antonio spent years digitizing all of Chris's records. And it became this collection called the Frontera collection. And the next step was to get it online. And so there's a YouTube channel of the Frontera collection, and you can listen to all this music, thousands and thousands of songs, and it's all database, and you can pick a topic. And it's this incredible resource for anybody to check out. And I was just at at this in-store event at Down Home Music, and Juan Antonio, who's probably in his 40s, is also a DJ, and he DJs the stuff. So he was DJ. He had 2 or 3 other people with him. They were at the front of the back of the store where there's a little stage, and they were DJing all these songs from the Frontera collection, which is the same kind of music that's in Chulas Fronteras. And there were all these extra copies of Chris's 78 collection in boxes, and younger people were leafing through these records and buying them for $1 a piece and going out there with stacks. And I just thought, man, poor Chris, if he could have lived 2 years more, he would have seen that and been just amazed. So anyway, that's kind of a wonderful, I think, sort of a update to, a contemporary version of connection with Chulas Fronteras. And I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. Well, I think even that anecdote about, the music being DJ'd and the music being digitized, one of the things that I think is so cool about what this film shows, and so many of these films we're talking about, is, and we've touched on this already, the idea of, people creating this music and this being part of American culture. But one of the things that this captures so well, too, is the idea of it's how this stuff evolves and how this stuff transmutates, that I think one thing that I find troubling about the way that so much art and so much culture is talked about today, and I think specifically in this country, is that, we were talking about the way that music was so segmented decades ago, and then we got this explosion of world music and people incorporating all these different styles, right? And when you look at that, that's such a part of this rich lineage that, the film talks about, like, this music emerged from, there's that line about giving the German polka a different taste, right? And how all of these different music styles came together and from all these different places, and people just kind of took and remixed and reimagined and did all of these different things with this music. Now, I think it has become so segmented in a lot of ways, right? I think a lot of people artistically today, and I, when I talk to people in my town or whatever, limit themselves in a way and kind of go like, well, you can't do that with this, right? Like, well, this has to be done this way. Mm-hmm. Or, whether it's music and it's like, well, this type of traditional music is really only performed with these instruments, or, well, you don't get to play this type of music. And this person, well, if you're going to do this, you can't have it sound like this. And that feels so antithetical to what this, especially the music we see in this film, captures, which is, yes, there's a tradition to it, but it's something that is allowed to and encouraged to evolve and grow. And so when you're talking about not just this music being digitized, but being DJ'd, right? And people being able to find, and people being able to take this and adapt it and transform it, I think is so encouraging, because what Chulas Fronteras captures is not just a type of music, but a moment in the evolution of a type of music.
Right. Well, it actually, this brings up an interesting, what would I say? Something interesting that is part of each of these traditions that we've done films about. The same is true in Louisiana. There are the people who want to keep it the way it was and keep the tradition going with, like you say, with the same instruments and, not wanting to mess with it. But there's always the folks that want to take it to another level. So just with Flaco Jiménez and his brother Santiago, you have right there that an example of this interesting contrast. Santiago played the music of his father, who was one of the real instrumental people in the music, Santiago Sr. And he has kept his father's style and tradition going in a very traditional way. Flaco can play that, but he took it somewhere else. He started playing with Ry Cooder and Willie Nelson and Doug Psalm, and he played, he expanded it. And so there's always these people who want to sort of, I guess, get creative with it and do other things with it. And then there are the people that want to keep it more in a traditional form. And I think there's a place for both. And they are like the traditional folks are sort of an anchor, and the other folks are the ones who are really moving it forward in time. And I think they're both very important.
Well, I mean, look at how crazy that situation with the Grammys is this year. Of the country, they're splitting the country music award into two because of Beyonce. They're basically segregating black country music and white country music. And irregardless of the fact that Beyonce's album sucked, like you shouldn't be like segregating it's better than the other like modern day bootlicker country music where it's like, hey, I like Coors Light and I like the Cops and I like seeing my girl, and it's like, oh, okay, is this any worse than Beyonce? So it's you're right, it is this weird thing that it feels like it's a never ending cycle of there's always going to be people that just want it to be what it used to be, and there's going to be people that want to push it forward. You see it in everything from movies to music to sports. Politics is easily the biggest example of that. The traditionalists versus the liberals and all that. It's this weird phenomenon of people benefiting from people that have pushed things forward, but then they don't want to push things forward because they think, well, we figured it out. It's good now. We're fine. Like we don't need. There's no reason to do anything different than what I do, or what I like. And you try to explain to them, like in a movie like this, like Mike's saying, it's this inflection point, seeing kind of like where things are changing, and you see where it started. Blah blah blah. You try to explain to them, well, it wasn't always like this, like this, if you like, say with rap, like, oh, you like Kendrick Lamar? Okay. It wasn't always like Kendrick Lamar. You needed a Run DMC, a Kool Moe Dee, you needed a Public Enemy. You needed these guys to push things forward. And then, you needed it. So it's one of the most frustrating things, I think, as someone who just loves not just movies, but pop culture in general, music, books, comic books, whatever, of just running into people that do not like new ideas. They just want the same thing regurgitated over and over again until they don't.
To counter that, there's also the opposite direction, which is people who tend to view whatever has come before or the older or traditional ways of doing things as, well, that's just, you made the joke, Tom, about the people who go, I haven't watched a movie earlier than 2010, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. One of the things that is so exciting about discovering something new, and this is, I'd love to just briefly segue into this, like, something I love is when I get into something or discover something that was completely unfamiliar to me before, right? That I get to go, oh boy, this isn't just a new thing. Now it's this rich history. Like I got a number of years ago, I got exposed to pro wrestling, which I'd never paid attention to, right? I was not my thing. But to me, it wasn't about just watching the guys in the ring do the flips. It was, so you're telling me this thing goes back nearly 100 years and it started with carnival hucksters, and I want to find out all about this. And one of the things with, again, if you sit down and watch a film like Chulas Fronteras, or more particularly, I'll say to folks, if you pick up the Blu-ray, as I have, one of the great things about the Blu-ray is you watch Chulas Fronteras and you find yourself going, God, there's this rich world I really want to dive more into. And the Blu-ray goes, so there's Del Mero Corazon. And you go, yes! It's like, it could not work out better when your brain goes like, I'd love to dive deeper into, oh, there it is! Yeah. So I'd love, Maureen, if you could talk a little bit for the viewers about Del Mero Corazon, how that came together and just kind of what the process was with that film.
Okay, here's where I come in much more. When Les finished editing and, Chulas Fronteras, and it was released, so he edited it. This was before I was an editor, really. And he was very happy with it, as was Strachwitz. They both realized that they had a classic. So, but Chris could not stand to see the outtakes just sitting there on the shelf, because there were all these great songs that were not in Chulas, and he wanted to do something with it. Well, Les already did his part. He said, I'm done. There's no way I'm going to go back to outtakes and do something with outtakes. And so here comes little Maureen. I'm like, how old am I? I'm 26. And I go, I will. And so there were some scenes that Les had already edited and that were wonderful. Like, I don't know if you remember in Del Mero Corazon, the one about the bus. There's a song about the bus, the guy going on the bus and looking for his lost love. Les had mostly edited that. So there were several scenes that were already cut. But when I was looking at the outtakes, I realized that there were a lot of love songs. And Strachwitz actually said, well, the love songs we didn't really get into in Chulas Fronteras because there was all this other stuff I wanted to put in, like the corridos are really important in Chulas Fronteras. So I said, well, how about let's do something with the love songs? And Guillermo was interested, and I was interested to know if there were even deeper connections in Mexican culture with this tradition, especially of the lyrics of the songs of Mexican music. And he went back and said that, well, there are some Aztec lyrics or, poems that we can access, that we can use. And so he came up with all these beautiful Aztec poetic pieces, and we put them in the film in connection with songs that were made more contemporaneously, so that there was a connection, especially the songs about love. And so in retrospect, when I look back, it was always a film by Chris Strachwitz, Les Blank, Maureen Gosling, and Guillermo Hernandez. But I realized in retrospect that I really directed that film because it was kind of my idea, and I kind of oversaw it. I mean, Chris was always there, of course, giving his feedback, and Guillermo was there. So it was very much a co-production. But I kind of, I was kind of the director. So that was really the first film I directed. That now on the new restored version of Del Mero Corazon, it says director Maureen Gosling. So anyway, Chris loved it. He was so happy with that film. And before that film, I was always just kind of Les's little sidekick. Chris was, he was kind of not necessarily misogynist, but he was sort of, it took a lot for him to be impressed by what women did. And so after that film, he totally gained a new respect for me. And ever after that, I was his friend. He realized that I was okay. And I got my respect from Chris from that film. And I just think the other part is that as you know, that there were some, it actually goes in keeping with what you were talking about, the progression and moving to another level. In that film is little Joey La Familia, who is not regular Tex-Mex, but was much more kind of a rocky guy, and as was Chavela Ortiz, who lived in California. And so Chris and Les filmed Little Joe when he had a concert in California, and they filmed Chavela Ortiz because she's one of the only, at the time, was one of the only women accordionists. So he wanted to film Chavela. And so how to put them in a film about the, this more traditional Texas sounding music. So we did it. And I just love the Little Joe song. I think it's so beautiful, and it's sort of very poetic. And then we have the murals that totally connect with, the farm workers and Aztec, ancestry and so forth. So, anyway, that's some of the stuff I wanted to say about Del Mero Corazon.
Well, I love what you said about, the way Strachwitz reacted to it, because I do think a lot of people, obviously I'm not in the film industry, Tom and I are journalists, but the one thing that these industries do have in common is this weird thing I think a lot of people outside of it don't know, which is how often you're working with people, collaborating with people who don't necessarily see you as a total person until they go, oh, so you can do shit.
Right.
Oh, like the amount, the amount of time somebody will turn around in my line of work and they'll go, walk over. You've not said more than 10 words to this person. They walk over and go, hey man, I read that story you did.
Uh-huh.
You can write. And you almost want to look at them and go, yeah, what did you think I do here all this time?
Yeah, right.
What did you, yeah. Why else would I have been here?
Right. Yeah. No, so it was one of the first films I really edited. I mean, I didn't edit that one from scratch, but it was, a real editing job. So that really was a stepping stone to the other stuff I did later, where I became full editor. Now, and just being involved with those films, as I said, totally opened the world of Mexican American culture and Mexican culture to me. And I ended up doing the film in Mexico about the women in Oaxaca.
Now, as we wind down, I do always try and close out, the program talking about the film in the context of its year. We always point to the Academy Awards to try and give a sense of what kind of year were we in? Now, I do think this one is interesting because very often when I talk about particularly the documentary category, it's a case of we're talking about these landmark documentaries in the registry, and then, not to be too dismissive, but the film that wins Best Documentary at the Oscars oftentimes is just one of those very creaky films with a voiceover going, "The people walked at sunrise." One of those
not anymore.
No, not anymore.
No.
But also not the year of that Chulas Fronteras releases. I thought this was interesting because it so that year the Best Documentary Feature category was Hollywood on Trial, Off the Edge, People of the Wind, Volcano, and Inquiry into the Life and Death of Malcolm Lowry. Now, I'm not bringing those up because those are the ones that people are writing home about, but interestingly enough, Tom, can you guess what movie we've already covered on this podcast won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature that year?
Harlan County?
Correct. This was the year of Harlan County, USA.
I did it.
Yeah.
Look at me. I should get sick.
So, yeah. And the reason I want to bring that up, too, is that's also a film, even though it's obviously about a show, where music plays a role. And particularly, this is talking about American folk music. And with that film, as we talked about on that episode many moons ago, you're hearing melodies and songs that, we were taught in grade school, except with lyrics that were certainly not what we were taught in grade school, We were taught keep on the sunny side. We were not taught stay on the picket line.
Yeah.
That's an interesting, and for context, the Best Picture nominees that year, again, weirdly, there's a music element to it, were All the President's Men, Network, Taxi Driver, Bound for Glory. Which, again, something was in the air that year.
Yeah.
And the Best Picture winner that year was Rocky. So just to kind of give folks a bit of place setting on,
that's pretty interesting.
Isn't it? It's kind of wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before, I don't know if you're going to mention that all of these films are on the Criterion Collection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of the films have DVD extras so that you can, I don't know what they do in the Criterion Collection, if they actually put the DVD extras online or not. But if you get the DVD, you can hear stories about all this stuff.
Yeah.
From the filmmakers and the filmmakers. And so the DVD, I think and the Blu-ray of Chulas Fronteras has Chris and Les talking about their adventures filming.
So, yeah, the Blu-ray for Chulas. So Chulas is, I believe, on the Criterion Channel streaming service, but it's not on a Blu-ray from Criterion. There is a Blu-ray you can get on the Les Blanks Films website, where folks can also, if they want, buy a T-shirt, which I have done. I think in terms of Les Blank Films and Criterion, there's Burden of Dreams. A Poem is a Naked Person, which I know you worked on to try and bring that to life. And then there is the Les Blank Always for Pleasure collection, which has so many of them, from Blues According to Lightning Hopkins, Gap-Toothed Women, Cajun Creole Cooking, and the other Les Blank film in the National Film Registry, Garlic is as Good as 10 Mothers, which is, I remember I discovered that film because of the National Film Registry. Like seeing it on that list, at the end of the episode, a little insight. The first Les Blank film I saw was Werner Herzog Eats a Shoe, because we were in a new German cinema class in college, and our professor screened that for us, and I was like, well, what the hell is going on here? And diving into it, consequently met Werner Herzog 2 weeks after that, which was a very, very bizarre experience. But I remember seeing the title Garlic is as Good as 10 Mothers, and in my head going, because I was unfamiliar with the Blank filmography at that point, in my head going, surely this must just be a metaphorical title. What must the actual topic be? And then having that moment of, all right, let's party.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks can seek that out. The Criterion Blu-ray's up, or lesblankfilms.com. And again, a lot of it is, I believe, also on Canopy, folks like that, as is This Ain't No Mouse music and some of the works that folks can check out. But Maureen Gosling, thank you so much for coming on the program, and as I said, being the first person in the registry to also talk about it on our show. That's
that's great. I'm honored.
Yeah, it's very, very surreal. We got to have this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Very cool.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It was really fun to meet you virtually, and I appreciate it very much. And and Garlic is as Good as 10 Mothers. I was very involved in that one too.
Well,
and I got to eat all the food.
Well, we will, we'll whenever we get, I don't know how long it'll take before we get to that one. Yeah. I believe so. That one gets inducted, later on. But thank you so much. And is there anything you wanted to kind of like throw out there, plug for folks to check out or to look for in the near future?
Well, this new film that I'm the director of is called The 9 Lives of Barbara Dane, and we're showing it around the country right now in different cities, and having live music whenever possible, women singers to complement and extend the legacy of Barbara Dane. And it's also going to be on PBS in Women's History Month, so that you can look for it then.
Terrific. Well, Maureen Gosling, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and we look forward to speaking with you again, hopefully down the line. But for everybody else, stick around, because we'll be right back with our picks for the National Film Registry.
The National Film Registry isn't some fixed object, frozen in time. It's always growing, adding new titles every year. These annual selections are made by the National Film Preservation Board, with members like Martin Scorsese, Alfre Woodard, and Leonard Maltin, and representatives from organizations like the Academy, the DGA, and the AFI coming together to debate and decide. But they don't just pull titles out of thin air. They pull from the public, people like you and us, who can submit their nominations for the registry in a form on the Library of Congress's website. What we do, at the end of each episode, is have Mike and Tom pick films not yet in the registry that they feel should be, inspired by that day's topic. At the end of each season, those films will be formally submitted to the National Film Registry for consideration on behalf of You're Missing Out. Here are today's picks.
So my pick for this episode was very easy, mainly because it was almost predetermined from the beginning of this show, and we came up with the idea of pairing movies with the movies that we've talked about at the end of during an episode. Once we pretty much knew that at some point, I think we pretty much clocked that this would be the first music doc we were going to get to in the registry. My pick was locked in stone. Not the one that, there's another one I could have gone with for this, but I think, just in my opinion, it's the best music doc I've ever seen. I might be biased because it's about my favorite band, but I'm going with Some Kind of Monster, Joe Berlinger's doc about Metallica's recording of Saint Anger, and the just absolute calamity on like every level that that period was of Hetfield going through alcohol recovery, Lars trying to like exert more power over the musical direction of the band, then bringing the producer of the albums in as the replacement bassist because Jason Newsted quit. The search for a new bassist, the artistic pretension of trying to like not sound like Metallica and make like a new sound, and then it turning into that absolute just tin can garbage drum snare sound that Lars came up with. The band almost breaks up. They go to therapy. Just the unvarnished, and I'm sure there's plenty of varnish done anyway because I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that they just would not want people to see. But for what they actually showed us, it's a pretty revealing human look at a band that has become pretty mythic in the music world, heavy metal in particular. I think it's a fascinating doc. It's just absolutely engrossing. It's a long one, but it never feels long. And to be able to capture this point in time where Metallica could have lived or died, basically, and now having the hindsight of the movie that they were able to resurrect themselves from the ashes of that truly god awful album and that tough time personally in their lives. I think it's one of the magic tricks of documentaries, of being in the right place at the right time and getting something you weren't even planning on getting. I think it's really something special, and I don't know if any other band would have been this open with their struggles personally, musically, all in every aspect of their lives. I think it is a triumph. Maybe it's definitely not Berlinger's best doc or most impactful doc because that man helped free men from death row. But if you're pairing music docs, I mean, I think Some Kind of has to be, for me, it's gonna be the first pick, like no matter what. So I'm going with Some Kind of Monster.
For me, I alluded to the episode, some of the things that really appeal to me about Chulas Fronteras, what it represents. Both it capturing a moment in time, right? Capturing a very specific moment in time, and also the way that it shows musical styles coming together and what they can evolve into. And that led me in a very particular direction. As Tom suggested, music documentaries, there's a lot of different directions you can go. And what I'm going to nominate to the registry isn't even a documentary per se. And who knows if they'd even take it, because technically, I guess it's also an episode of a TV show, kind of a docu-series, whatever you want to call it. And I also, in our episode, alluded to younger listeners who maybe wouldn't be as familiar with certain things. For younger listeners who maybe don't know the full impact of a program called MTV Unplugged, a series of concerts with notable musical artists performing their tracks without electrical instruments, right? There are a number of notable Unplugged episodes. Two of these performances, Eric Clapton and Tony Bennett, would go on to win Album of the Year at the Grammys, right? A lot of people of my parents' generation will talk about the Bee Gees Unplugged as something, but the most famous and impactful Unplugged concert, undeniably, is Nirvana Unplugged in New York. It captures some of the final performance moments in the life of Kurt Cobain, but more than that, it was the uniqueness of the compositions in that show, in that concert. Part of the reason it's so linked to me with Chulas is we were talking about the accordion and accordion players during this episode, and the incorporation of an accordion into their performance of Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam which was not a Nirvana song. It was a song by the Vaselines, but that in and of itself is like a modification of a Christian hymn. We also hear the final song in the performance. Where Did You Sleep Last Night is a traditional song that they play in the style of and evoking Leadbelly, but this idea of this continuum and the way that music evolves, for anybody who hasn't seen it, even if you don't watch the entire thing, which you should, like their cover of Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie is incredible. There's so many great moments, but the one that sticks with everybody is the final number, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? I think anybody who's seen it remembers this kind of accidentally unsettling moment when Kurt Cobain is singing the final line and says, I'd shiver, pauses, does this sort of solemn inhale and does the final line the whole night through. It feels almost like a eulogy, a self-eulogy in a way. And it's just so striking to me that, Nirvana, perhaps the last rock band, if you will, ends this show with a traditional song representing the way that this continuum of music can evolve and that music and folk music can evolve in American culture. I think it's just such an important testament to not just a place and time in music, but honestly an important encapsulation of a century of American music, right? The bookend of a century of American music. It's just such a remarkable thing and such an important work, from the performance to the way it's shot to everything to just being such a crucial piece of American pop culture. So my pick is Nirvana MTV Unplugged in New York.
Next week,
we're taking a couple of weeks off. Not going to be back again until 2026, because of holidays, all that business. So, take the time, enjoy the terrible weather, enjoy the possibly terrible company you're going to have to endure for those couple of weeks, and we'll be back in the new year. This might have you asking, but what about the National Film Registry picks? Don't those come out in December? Not this year. So if they can be a little late to the party, we can be a little late finishing up the season. But rest assured, we will finish it up. So we will be back in 2026.
You're Missing Out is a production of Neon Night Media. It's hosted by Mike Natali and Tom Lorenzo. The show is produced by Kyle Lampar and edited by Mike Natali and Kyle Lampar. More information about our hosts and guests are in the show notes. Thank you to Amanda Rush for our social media, and all of you for checking us out.
If you're listening right now or want to take the show on the go, every episode is available as an audio podcast. Follow You're Missing Out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please leave a review and a rating. It helps folks find the show.
Want to watch the show or watch some of the films along with us? Great, that's why we're doing this. Don't leave us alone out here. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got video versions of every episode, uploads of some of the National Film Registry titles we're discussing, commentary tracks, and live streams. And once a month, I'll be uploading some content that's exclusive to the YouTube channel. So be sure to click subscribe and hit that little bell to be notified as soon as new stuff goes up. Because, let's be fucking real, I ain't sticking to a goddamn schedule.
So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next time.
And you'll see us next time. Because we don't watch you, you're watching us.